ruthless gang of thugs thought they were about to rob just another homeless man, stripping him of his last few possessions. What they didn't know was that their so-called easy target was none other than Keanu Reeves, a man whose kindness is legendary, but whose patience is not infinite. Even worse, they made the grave mistake of disrespecting his dog. After a long day on set, Keanu was simply trying to get home, waiting quietly for his train. Dressed in worn-out jeans, a loose denim jacket, and a faded baseball cap pulled low over his face, he looked like just another tired commuter, exactly how he wanted it. The last thing he needed was attention. Beside him, on a leash, trotted Andy, a beagle puppy with floppy ears and soulful eyes, assigned to him by an animal trainer for bonding before shooting the next John Wick scenes. What was meant to be a temporary arrangement had already turned into something much more meaningful. As Keanu walked through the dimly lit station, he kept to his quiet ritual, stopping by the small community of homeless individuals who had made this underground space their home. He greeted them with warmth, offering small bills and coins, not out of pity, but out of respect. This had become part of his routine, a small act of kindness he performed without fanfare, without expectation. "Here you go," he murmured, handing a few bills to an elderly woman wrapped in a tattered blanket. She looked up at him, eyes brimming with gratitude. "God bless you, young man," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Keanu just nodded, moving on, not seeking thanks, not waiting for recognition. Andy wagged his tail, drawing smiles even in this somber place. But just as Keanu reached a familiar tent, a place where his friend Max usually stayed, something felt off. Max was a kind-hearted man, always accompanied by his tiny chihuahua, Button. But tonight, the spot was eerily silent. "Max?" Keanu called softly, a ripple of concern in his voice. After a pause, the tent flap rustled, and Max finally emerged. The sight made Keanu's stomach drop, bruises darkened the man's temple, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and something worse, fear. "Oh, hey, Keanu," Max said, voice barely above a whisper, forcing a weak smile that didn't reach his eyes. Keanu crouched down, scanning the scene, his sharp instincts kicking in. "Max, what happened? Where's Button?" Max hesitated, glancing around nervously. And then, before he could answer, footsteps echoed from the far end of the station. Shadows moved, figures emerged. The thugs had returned. What happened next? You won't believe the turn this confrontation took. Stay tuned until the end, you do not want to miss this. The usual yapping that always accompanied Max's presence was gone. The silence was unsettling. "Where's Button?" Keanu asked. At the mention of her name, Max's shoulders slumped, his composure crumbling in an instant. He buried his face in his hands, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were brimming with tears. "They took her," he choked out, his voice hollow. "Those bastards took my Button." Keanu's brow furrowed, a mixture of confusion and concern tightening his expression. "Who took her? What happened?" Max took a shaky breath, his hands trembling as he reached into his pocket and pulled out an empty dog collar. The sight of it seemed to hit him all over again, like a fresh wound being reopened. "It was yesterday," he began, his voice drained of life. "These thugs, they've been coming around for a while now, demanding security fees, saying they own this place." He spat the words out with bitter resentment. "I couldn't pay. I never can. Usually, they just rough me up a bit and move on." Keanu listened intently, a steady hand resting on Max's shoulder. Andy sat quietly beside him, as if sensing the weight of the moment. Max exhaled sharply, his voice cracking as he continued. "But yesterday, Button, she tried to protect me. She's always been brave, my little girl. When they started pushing me around, she started barking, snapping at them." He hesitated, his throat tightening. "She bit one of them on the ankle." Keanu closed his eyes, already dreading where this was going. "They went crazy," Max's voice was rushed now, words tumbling out in a desperate attempt to unload his pain. "One of them kicked her, Keanu. Hard. She yelped, and I tried to grab her, to shield her. But then, his hand brushed over the bruise near his temple. One of them had a baseball bat. I don't remember much after that. When I woke up, I was back in my tent. The others here, they found me, carried me back. Max's fingers tightened around the empty collar. His next words came out in a whisper. But Button, she was gone. A cold anger settled in Keanu's chest. His jaw clenched as he processed the cruelty of it all. He knew how much that tiny dog meant to Max, more than just a pet, she was his family. I'm so sorry, Max, Keanu said, his voice heavy with genuine sorrow. Do you think, is there any chance she might still be alive? Max shook his head slowly. I don't think so, Keanu. News travels fast down here. If anyone had seen or heard anything about a little chihuahua, I'd know. He exhaled a bitter laugh. And those guys, they're not the type to show mercy. Keanu's mind raced. He had spent enough time in these underground spaces to know how things worked. People disappeared. Justice was a luxury that didn't extend to those society ignored. Have you gone to the police? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Max let out a hollow chuckle. The police? His voice was laced with exhausted cynicism. They're just another version of those thugs. Ask for money to investigate, then never do a damn thing. To them, we're nothing more than a problem to sweep under the rug. The weight of Max's words sat heavy in the air. Keanu clenched his fists, frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior. The world was unfair, and no amount of fame or fortune could erase that truth. Beside him, Andy nudged his hand, as if sensing his growing anger. Keanu looked down at the beagle and felt an overwhelming appreciation for the little pup's presence. It was a reminder of the quiet, unconditional love animals brought into a world that often lacked it. I really am sorry, Max, Keanu said, his voice softer now. Is there anything I can do? Max managed a sad smile. You being here, listening, that's more than most people do. He shook his head, wiping his eyes. You're a good man, Keanu. For a while, they sat in the dim light of the subway station, wrapped in silence. The story of Button was more than just a tragedy, it was a reminder of how cruel and unforgiving the city could be for those living in its shadows. Then, Max's gaze shifted toward Andy, who had been sitting patiently the whole time. A flicker of something crossed his face, curiosity, maybe even the tiniest hint of joy, however fleeting. This your pup? Max asked, his voice softer as he reached out hesitantly. Keanu glanced down at Andy, a small smile playing at his lips. Not exactly, he admitted. Andy here is a temporary companion for a film role. He actually belongs to a trainer, but I get to keep him for a while. Max nodded, gently patting Andy's head. The beagle responded with a friendly wag of his tail, leaning into Max's touch. He's got a sweet nature, Max observed, his voice tinged with wistfulness. You can tell a lot about a dog in just a few moments. This one's got a good heart. Keanu watched as Max interacted with Andy, catching a glimpse of the man he had known before this tragedy. It was a reminder of the healing power animals held, their ability to bring light even in the darkest places. As Keanu stood, ready to head toward Platform 1, Max's expression shifted again. The brief moment of warmth disappeared, replaced by something else. A warning. Keanu, he said, his voice low and urgent. Be careful. Especially at this hour. The station, it's not safe. Keanu met his gaze, understanding the weight behind those words. Those guys, Max continued, glancing around. They're always looking for easy targets. Keanu nodded. I appreciate the heads up, Max. I'll keep my eyes open. As they said their goodbyes, Max hesitated. Then, as if he just needed to say it out loud, he murmured, You know, you're the only person who's spoken to me today. Keanu paused, looking at Max with quiet understanding. Then I guess the world needs to do better, he said simply. And with that, he He turned toward the platform, Andy trotting at his side, unaware of the storm that was about to come. What happened next? You won't believe the turn this night took. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss this. Max offered a small, sad smile. It helped, even if just a little. Thank you for that. Keanu felt a pang in his chest at the stark reminder of the isolation that came with homelessness. He had seen it before, but tonight, it hit differently. I'll be back tomorrow, Max, he promised. Take care of yourself, okay? Max nodded, but his eyes darted around nervously. You too, Keanu. Remember what I said. Be watchful. With a final nod, Keanu and Andy made their way toward Platform 1. The station was eerily quiet now, their footsteps echoing off the tiled walls. At a nearby booth, Keanu bought a coffee, more out of habit than desire, before settling on one of the benches to wait for his train. As he sipped the bitter liquid, he found himself talking softly to Andy, the pup's presence a comforting constant in the unsettling atmosphere. What do you think, buddy? Quite a night, huh? Andy tilted his head, his ears perked up as if listening. Keanu chuckled softly, but the moment of calm was short-lived. The relative quiet was shattered by the sound of heavy boots scraping against the concrete floor. Keanu looked up. 3 men were approaching, their swagger and demeanor immediately setting off alarm bells in his mind. Max's warning echoed in his thoughts as the figures closed in. Even from a distance, he could see they were intoxicated, their movements slightly unsteady but their intent unmistakable. 2 of them carried baseball bats, swinging them lazily at their sides, but there was nothing casual about the menace in their eyes. Well, the tallest of the 3 sneered. Looks like we got a new hobo guy hanging around. Keanu remained calm, his voice steady. I'm just waiting for my train. The boldest of the thugs let out a harsh laugh, the sound bouncing off the empty platform. Oh, we've heard that one before. Who do you think you are, some kind of celebrity? The shortest of the 3, stocky and aggressive, stepped forward. No celebrity dresses like that. Stop playing games and pay up. Keanu's mind raced. These had to be the same thugs Max had warned him about. Look, there's been a misunderstanding, he said, keeping his voice measured. I'm not homeless. I'm just. The tall one stepped in closer, invading his space. We don't care what you are, he spat. I'm Bowie, that's Will, and over there? That's Connie. He nodded toward the shortest thug. This is our station. You're in our territory. And you pay for the privilege of being here. Keanu felt a mix of emotions, a surge of anger at the injustice, concern for Andy's safety, and the growing realization that these men weren't interested in reason. The platform, a mundane part of his daily routine, had transformed into something else entirely. An arena. The thugs were closing in. Andy was growing restless beside him. Keanu knew he had to make a decision. Fight, flee, or find a way to outthink them. But these guys weren't done playing their game just yet. I'm telling you, Keanu repeated, his voice firm but calm. I'm not homeless. I'm just waiting for my train. Will sneered. Yeah. Empty your pockets, tough guy. Realizing the situation was escalating fast, Keanu slowly reached into his pocket, keeping his movements deliberate. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and held it out, hoping this small concession might de-escalate things. Will snatched the wallet, flipping through it with growing disappointment. $20? That's it? He scoffed, tossing the wallet back at Keanu like it was worthless. Keanu caught it, but in the same instant, the bald thug's eyes locked onto something else. Well, what do we have here? His hand shot out, grabbing at Keanu's neck. For a split second, Keanu thought he was about to be choked, but then he felt a sharp tug. The chain around his neck snapped. Keanu's breath hitched as he watched the thug dangle his family heirloom between his fingers. Hey, Keanu said, his voice dangerously low. That belongs to my family. Will let out a cruel laugh, twirling the necklace in his fingers. "Oh, I think it has plenty of value to us." Then, with a smirk, he added, "What's the matter? Your family probably all dead, huh? Otherwise, you wouldn't be down here all alone, looking like that, with a puppy." The words hit like a slap, not because they were true, but because of the sheer callousness behind them. A quiet fury built inside Keanu. Without thinking, he stood up, his eyes locked onto Will's. "Give it back." His voice was calm, steady, dangerous. For a moment, the two men stood locked in a silent battle, a war of wills over the small piece of metal and chain. Then, a sudden shove. Connie, the stocky one, slammed into Keanu's chest, sending him stumbling backward. He barely caught himself before he hit the bench behind him. As he straightened, he found himself face to face with a baseball bat. Connie was gripping it tightly, holding it just inches away from Keanu's ribs. "Make another move," Connie growled, his voice thick with threat. "And you'll regret it." Andy let out a low, warning growl, stepping forward. Keanu instinctively reached for the leash, holding the pup back. The last thing he needed was for Andy to get hurt. The situation was spiraling fast. The thugs weren't done. And Keanu? Keanu wasn't about to let them walk away without learning exactly who they were messing with. What happened next would shock even them. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss what comes next. Bowie, the bald thug, turned his attention to Andy, a malicious grin spreading across his face. Keanu's muscles tensed as he watched Bowie spit directly on the beagle. Then, with a smug chuckle, the thug kicked over Keanu's coffee, the warm liquid splashing over both man and dog. Andy yelped, startled by the sudden heat against his fur. Something in Keanu snapped. He lunged forward, instinctively moving to shield Andy from further harm. But the puppy, frightened and agitated, slipped free from his grip. "Andy, no!" Keanu called out, his voice filled with panic as the beagle darted after the retreating thugs, barking furiously. Keanu's heart leapt into his throat as he saw Andy's leash trailing behind him, just out of reach. Time slowed. Keanu surged forward, stretching his fingers as far as they would go, and just as he thought he had lost him, his hand closed around the leash. For the briefest moment, relief washed over him. Then he looked up. The thugs had surrounded him. Andy, still caught in the heat of the moment, had sunk his tiny teeth into Bowie's boot. The thug snarled, shaking his foot violently. "Looks like your mutt needs to be taught a lesson." Will, the second thug, reached for the leash, yanking it from Keanu's hands with a brutal force. Andy yelped as he was suddenly lifted off the ground, his little legs kicking helplessly in the air. "Stop. Please." Keanu's composure shattered as he watched them manhandle the defenseless puppy. "He's not even my dog. He belongs to..." Crack. Keanu froze. Connie, the stocky thug, raised his baseball bat, gripping it tight. His eyes burned with pure malice. "I've cracked plenty of homeless skulls with this," he sneered. "Don't think I won't do the same to you." Keanu's fists clenched. His entire body screamed for action, but he knew the brutal reality: one wrong move, and Andy would suffer for it. And then it happened. One of them pulled a belt from his waist. Keanu watched in horror as they wrapped it around Andy's snout, cinching it tight, muffling his whimpers, silencing his cries. A chilling echo of Button's fate. Max's words crashed into Keanu's mind like a freight train. "They took her, Keanu, those bastards took my Button." The exact same cruelty. The exact same heartlessness. The thugs turned to leave, retreating into the shadows of the station. Andy, helpless and afraid, struggled in their grip. Keanu made one last desperate move, but the bat hovering just inches from his face reminded him that the odds weren't in his favor. "This is payment for your stay," Will sneered. "Consider yourself lucky you're still standing." And with that, they disappeared, taking with them not just Andy, but a piece of Keanu's faith in humanity. For a long moment, Keanu stood frozen, his breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. The echoes of Andy's muffled whimpers clawed at his mind. The injustice of it all made his blood boil. The helplessness. The rage. As the adrenaline began to fade, the full weight of what had just happened slammed into him. They had taken everything. His family heirloom. Andy. A dog he had grown to care for more deeply than he ever expected in their short time together. Keanu's hands tightened into fists. He would not let this stand. Somehow, some way, he would find Andy. He would bring him home. A new fire burned inside him. He turned on his heel, ignoring the approaching train, ignoring the confused stares of the few late-night commuters who had caught the tail end of the confrontation. He had one focus. Find Andy. Find those thugs. End this. Keanu took off running, his heart pounding as he raced through the station. The tunnels stretched endlessly before him, a twisting labyrinth of flickering fluorescent lights and damp concrete corridors. The city's underworld swallowed people whole. But not tonight. Not if Keanu had anything to say about it. Then, movement. Up ahead, the thugs had split up, each disappearing down a different path. A practiced escape strategy. A way to confuse anyone who dared to follow. Keanu hesitated for a split second, then made his choice, pursuing the one he knew had Andy. He shoved past passengers spilling off a newly arrived train, muttering hasty apologies as he pushed forward. But the delay cost him. By the time he reached the last spot where he had seen the thug, they were gone. Vanished into the veins of the subway system. The realization hit Keanu like a physical blow. He had lost them. Frustration, helplessness, and fury crashed down on him all at once. But then, his eyes locked onto something else. Two police officers standing near the stairs. For the first time since this nightmare started, hope flared in Keanu's chest. Maybe, just maybe, he could get help. He rushed forward. "Excuse me, officers," he began, his voice tight with urgency. "I need to report a robbery and a kidnapping." The officers turned, their expressions shifting as they took in his disheveled appearance. The coffee stains on his clothes. The wild desperation in his eyes. And then, their faces changed. Professional interest melted into thinly veiled disgust. The taller officer scoffed. "Look, buddy," he said dismissively. "We don't have time for this." Keanu blinked, stunned. The second officer sighed, already turning away. "Why don't you move along?" Keanu's stomach dropped. They thought he was just another vagrant. Another nobody. And in that moment, Keanu Reeves realized something. The law wasn't coming to save Andy. If he wanted to get him back, he was going to have to do it himself. And heaven help the men who stood in his way. Keanu Reeves urgently pleaded with the police, explaining that his necklace had been stolen and a dog had been kidnapped, but the officers dismissed him with prejudice, telling him to move along. Just as Keanu was about to argue, a fan recognized him, and suddenly, the officers' attitudes shifted to fake concern. Now eager to assist, they asked which way the thugs had gone, but Keanu knew it was too late. They had disappeared into the night. Disgusted by their hypocrisy, Keanu declined their belated help. "Your job is to protect and serve everyone, not just the ones you think deserve it," he told them. Ashamed, the officers promised to keep an eye out, but Keanu had already made up his mind. He would find Andy himself. Exhausted and conflicted, Keanu stood on the subway platform, torn between continuing his search and going home to regroup. Just as he was about to leave, Max, breathless and determined, ran toward him. "I know where they are." Word had spread fast through the homeless community. Max explained that the thugs always gathered in the same spot after their rounds, giving them a chance to catch them before it was too late. Together, they retraced their steps, navigating the station's hidden corners. Then they saw them. The three thugs huddled in a dimly lit alcove, but Andy was nowhere in sight. Keanu tensed, ready to confront them, but Max placed a hand on his arm. Careful. We need a plan. Steeling himself, Keanu stepped into the light. I want my necklace back, he said, his voice firm. And both dogs, Andy and Button. The thugs laughed, mocking him. Bowie, the bald one, flaunted Keanu's necklace like a trophy, sneering, "Didn't learn your lesson the first time?" The situation escalated fast, but then something unexpected happened. From the shadows, dozens of homeless individuals emerged, forming a protective circle around Keanu and Max. The thugs, once so confident, now looked uneasy. An older man with a gray beard stepped forward. "Keanu helps us every night," he declared. "Now, we stand up for him." Realizing they were outnumbered, the thugs tried to maintain their bravado, but their grip on control was slipping fast. Keanu, sensing the shift, stepped forward. "It's over," he said. "Give back what you stole and tell us where the dogs are." Cornered and desperate, the thugs made a final attempt to fight their way out, a mistake. The homeless community fought back, quickly overpowering them. As the struggle ended, police sirens wailed in the distance. The same officers who had dismissed Keanu earlier now arrived to arrest the thugs. During the search, a crucial piece of evidence surfaced, a phone containing messages about selling stolen dogs. One message specifically mentioned a beagle being dropped off at a pet store called Pet Haven. Keanu's heart pounded. Andy and Button weren't just stolen, they were being trafficked. With no time to waste, the officers secured an emergency warrant, and Keanu, Max, and the police raced to Pet Haven. When they arrived, the store was closed, but a faint light glowed from the back. After a tense standoff, the owner reluctantly let them in, denying any wrongdoing, until officers found damning evidence linking him to stolen pets. Finally, the moment came. Keanu and Max were led to a small, dimly lit room filled with crates. The second the cages opened, Andy and Button burst out, tails wagging furiously, crying with joy. Keanu knelt down, scooping Andy into his arms, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief and victory. "It's okay, buddy," he whispered. "You're safe now." Beside him, Max collapsed to his knees, cradling Button, tears streaking his face. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured, holding the tiny chihuahua close. With the thugs arrested and the trafficking ring exposed, Keanu and Max stepped into the night, their dogs trotting beside them. As they walked, Keanu realized that tonight had changed him. He had always cared about the homeless community, but now he understood their struggles firsthand. "I want to do more," he told Max. "Food, shelter, job training, real change." Max hesitated, then nodded. "People like me, we're invisible to the world. But maybe that can change." Stopping at a convenience store, Keanu bought Max a prepaid phone, placing it in his hands. "My assistant will call you tomorrow," he said. "Promise me you'll answer." Max swallowed hard, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "I promise." As they reached the subway, Keanu turned to Max one last time. "This isn't goodbye. It's a new beginning." Max clutched Button close. "Thank you, Keanu. For everything." The train doors closed between them, but Keanu knew this wasn't just about a stolen necklace or a missing dog. This was about justice. About standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. As Andy curled up at his feet, looking up at him with trust and love, Keanu smiled. Tonight, they had done something good. But this was just the beginning.